Alright, hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again to the Black Box Podcast, BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Today we are revisiting the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. This was a case that took place back in 2007 in Portugal, perhaps the most famous missing persons case in the entire world. Netflix has an 8-part series on the subject. I have not watched that one yet, I have to confess to you. But I think there are some things that we should talk about with this case. I hope to get to the Netflix thing at some point, but there are some other things that you got going on before you can jump into that one. I was watching the Crime Watch UK documentary, presentation, episode, whatever you'd like to call it. More like just an episode as opposed to a full-length documentary. And I'm not going to lie to you, that one was hard to watch. They put it out in 2018, and it was so hard to watch because they used Jerry and Kate McCann, the two parents, as the kind of center point of this all. Now, what I can say is, Madeleine McCann is a case where the parents have been vilified in the court of public opinion. Like all things on this channel, this is mostly geared toward people who are somewhat familiar with the case so we can discuss the theories. Well, let's look at the situation. I used to follow this case back when I was just a true crime fan, before I ever started making recordings and uploading them to YouTube. And I came to kind of the conclusion on my own that what happened to Madeleine McCann in 2007 was her parents were giving her sleep aid drugs, and that led to her death in the apartment back in Praia de Luz. And then the parents, Jerry and Kate, covered it up. And it was completely unknown to me at the time that that was the leading theory from the Portuguese detective Gonçalo Amaral. He had a documentary on YouTube completely. He narrates it, but that is a Portuguese language one where they explore that theory. So I don't think that this is any sort of small coincidence that people are coming to this conclusion. Let's look at what's going on with Madeleine McCann. Why was there a cadaver dog in the apartment that was alerted behind the couch that there had been a dead body there? Because there had been a dead body there. Cadaver dog. A dog that can detect the scent of a dead body. And Madeleine McCann was kind of a great exploratory kind of lesson for us all. They have blood dogs, search dogs, cadaver dogs. Of course, the search dog is trying to detect a person's location. The blood dog is following the scent of blood. And the cadaver dog follows the scent of a dead body. Why was the cadaver dog alerting them inside the apartment? Because there had been a dead body there. And there was an alert behind the couch, and there was also an alert in the bedroom, specifically on a shelf in the closet. Closet or the cupboard-like thing. Why? Once again, because there was a dead body there. The Gonçalo Amaral theory, which we've talked about on this channel, we did a whole upload on that, so we won't revisit everything. But the nutshell version is, they believe that the parents were giving their children sleep aid drugs as well. Madeleine, though, somehow woke up during the middle of the night, and being unsupervised, she crawled up on top of the sofa, and there was kind of a large ledge in between the sofa and the window, much bigger than a typical windowsill. And while Madeleine was standing on the edge of the sofa, she fell forward, hit her head, and that led to her death. And in fact, they do believe perhaps she was trying to just look out to see if she could see her parents. In the Crime Watch episode from 2018, they were saying very clearly that the night before Madeleine went missing, quote unquote went missing, Madeleine was asking for her parents the night before. She's like, "Where were you, Mommy and Daddy? I was crying. I missed you." So apparently, even if they were giving her sleep aid drugs, maybe they weren't working too well on Madeleine McCann, and they simply just caused disorientation. You don't even have to factor them too much into the equation anymore. But the reason why I really wanted to do an upload about Madeleine McCann today was, going through the info, it's like, there's just some things that you can't get away from. You can't get away from looking at the parents in this. When it comes to true crime, This is not a political opinion. This is not a religious belief. If you find evidence that is contrary to your theory, if you find evidence that is contrary to what you think happened, you have to accept it. And you have to be like, all right, that theory that I had thought about for a long time, it wasn't right. This is more likely what happened. But the issue is, all these years, it's just like, I cannot get away from the fact that Madeleine died in the apartment and that her parents moved the body. It's my personal theory, and I think I've noticed this, people say similar varieties of this statement on the internet. My personal theory is that Jerry and Kate McCann moved the body the night that Madeleine died. There's the report of a man who was seen walking quickly, who had a girl's arms wrapped around his neck. Not the Tanner Man sighting that has been debunked over and over again, but a different sighting in Praia da Luz. It's most likely that they disposed of Madeleine's remains that night, and then 3 weeks later moved them to another location. So, so many people are coming to this conclusion, and we have some strong evidence that Madeleine died in the apartment. No ransom was ever asked for Madeleine McCann. If this is someone who's just trying to snatch babies, if this is somebody who is just trying to snatch children, they had 2 twins who were younger than Madeleine McCann, who should have been easier to abduct. If that's the objective, to abduct a child, there were 2 other kids in the apartment that weren't abducted. Why? Why weren't they abducted? Because they didn't fall off the ledge of a sofa and hit their head and die. And then the parents moved the body. Because that's what happened. There's the whole thing about, did Madeleine interrupt a burglary? Was somebody trying to burglarize the apartment and Madeleine was awake and walking around and that person abducted her? Well, where's the evidence of that? What was taken? What was smashed? Where is the hard evidence that that was a burglary? All the evidence seems to point to the fact that Madeleine died under some very bizarre circumstances. You could talk about sleep aid drugs. You could talk about parents just being very, very scared about leaving their children unsupervised. This whole thing with the Tapas 7, if you have any familiarity at all with the Madeleine McCann case, you'll know about the Tapas 7. You got these 7 people that are at the Tapas bar at the resort in Praia da Luz. Every 30 minutes, one of them goes to check on their children. Now, this is something that I thought, sounds impossible when you say it like that. What they mean is that every 30 minutes, a different member of the group would go to check on their own children. I was just like, that would mean that they just have, people walking around the resort completely, okay, let's check on Jerry and Kate's kids. They're fine. Check on my kids. They're fine. Do they have a ring of keys? No, what it means is that every 30 minutes, a different family would go to check on their own children, or someone from their own family would. But were Jerry and Kate just really scared that they had done something that they could get in trouble for? Leaving their kid unsupervised, unattended, and Madeleine died? The issue with sleep aid drugs is they think that is brought into the factor because it would have caused disorientation. And if Madeleine had been roaming around the apartment, she would have been much more disoriented. Even if she had been somehow woken out of this thing. Some kids are hard sleepers, some are soft sleepers. Kate McCann even says very clearly that a door slammed shut, like the window had been open and there was a draft and it slammed the door shut. But the twins didn't wake up. That sounds like very possibly they were under the influence of sleep aid drugs. In many houses, they're to try not to make noise, the kids are sleeping. That can vary a lot from person to person. I do admit that, but if they had been giving their kids sleep aid drugs and Madeleine somehow woke up, she would have been experiencing more disorientation than normal. And what happens when kids are left unsupervised? Well, they move around. They roam about the house. So, I cannot see anything else other than Madeleine somehow injures herself in the apartment. very easily she probably hit her head on the ledge by the window, the Gonzalo Amaral theory, and that her body, her deceased body, is there behind the sofa. So then Jerry and Kate move the body into the bedroom on the shelf in the cupboard closet thing that they had there. They decide what to do. Another reason why they would do this is because Jerry and Kate are both doctors, right? They have the awareness that if Madeleine is found dead under any suspicious circumstances, any sort of autopsy or anything would reveal that she had been given sleep aid drugs. And then it's all going to come back to them. And I said in my very first Madeleine McCann upload, if that were the case, they might be charged with murder. Murder. I mean, if they gave her drugs and the drugs caused her death in some way, I don't know why that wouldn't be murder. That's how the lawyers spin it. But the issue that I'm dealing with in this case is, what could be the other possibilities? We talked about a lot of high-profile disappearances, the disappearance of Brandon Lawson, the disappearance of Moore Murray, the disappearance of Tara Calico. When you look at those things, in almost all of them, these unsolved high-profile disappearances, the leading theory is they died on the day of their disappearance, if not shortly after. It's just a phenomenon. It's just something that we experience when we're dealing with true crime. With these high-profile disappearances, when someone has gone missing, and it's unsolved, like you don't get any sort of evidence that they are still alive, that means that they most likely passed away a short time after the disappearance. With the case of Madeleine McCann, she might have even passed away before the disappearance. I mean, Jerry and Kate probably came back from the tapas thing, and they could have found their daughter dead by the sofa. Then they start to plot, what do we do, how do we get out of this? Because they realize that if there was any sort of investigation into this, it's going to come back on them. They were already doing something that was irresponsible, leaving their kid unsupervised, and if there were any sleep aid drugs involved, they could be facing some serious legal trouble. I mean, I'm not even sure what would happen if Madeleine had died without the use of sleep aid drugs. Would they be facing legal trouble as well? But it's a very big phenomenon that we experience with a lot of people who have gone missing, and you don't see an enormous amount of evidence of their existence continuing. It means it's usually that person died a very short time around the disappearance. And that just seems to be the leading thing that's going with Madeleine McCann. I can't really think of any other possible sort of scenario. The only other thing that, like, some people are saying that they think Madeleine might have wandered out and somehow fallen into some sort of construction pit or the sewer thing. Once again, though, if that's the case, where's the physical evidence to support that? And furthermore, why is there a cadaver dog giving alerts in multiple places in the apartment? Not to mention that the cadaver dog later on had an alert but near the trunk of the car that they had rented 3 weeks after, and on the keys. I believe that I believe the cadaver dog was also alerted when the cadaver dog was smelling the keys. I mean, can't quote me on that one. I'm a little hazy on that specific detail. But when we look at that's why I'm saying it's most likely that Madeleine died in the apartment. Jerry and Kate moved the body to a particular location. Then 3 weeks later, they moved the body to a different location. They probably had something that they would have described as a heartfelt burial, and they probably were just like, this is how we have to move on. You really have to wonder about the thought process. After saying all that, I hope that I'm wrong. I hope that's not the case. I hope it didn't happen that way. I hope there is a simpler explanation that's less crazy, that's less sociopathic, that's less heinous, that parents found their kid dead, so then they moved the body and hid it in a cupboard for a while, and then they just disposed of her. Well, we don't want it to look badly on us, so we're just going to bury our daughter's body somewhere, and then we're going to tell news reporters for 12 years that this was an accident, or that this was a disappearance, sorry. I mean, I'm just in the mode that this was an accidental death and the parents covered it up. Well, not only accidental death, once again, if they did anything, whether it's leaving her unattended or giving her some sort of sleep aid drug, that could really turn into a legal charge much bigger than just this was an accident. That could very easily turn into a murder charge. What do you think happened to Madeleine McCann? I'm really having some trouble developing any other theories. I would say that I don't believe that this was a burglary. I don't believe that this was an abduction. I don't believe there was an intruder. The only other... Well, I just have to ask you, what do you think about this? If there is any chance that Madeleine is still alive, this is very, very pressing, because it's like, she would only be 15. You know, she disappeared in 2007. It's 2019. 12 years. She would only be 15 years old. What do you think happened?